Hey guys, how you doing? And welcome back, man. Welcome back. Gather round, gather round, gather round. Well, we just have a conversation, man. And this is a time where I just get to talk to you guys about some about the game of basketball that's been on my mind. And I can expound on it a little bit, right? And as y'all know, for the 2024-2025 season, the Philadelphia 76ers have had an all-time awful start to this season. And a lot of people want to blame Joel Embiid. Others want to blame Paul George. People want to blame injuries and a whole lot of other things that comes with the Philadelphia 76ers. But I think that this basketball team is simply cursed. The Philadelphia 76ers are currently cursed. And it starts way back, right? It starts way back in 2002 with this viral video right here.
I mean, but it's easy to talk about. It's easy to sum it up when you just talk about practice. We sitting here, I supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. If I can't practice, I can't practice, man. If I'm hurt, I'm hurt. I mean, simple as that. It ain't about that. I mean, it's not about that at all. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but it's easy to talk about. It's easy to sum it up when you just.
And it was that small part of a 30-minute press conference or post or interview that went viral. We talking about practice, and Allen Iverson, right? Just to give y'all some backstory. Allen Iverson was the number one draft pick in the 1996 NBA draft to the Philadelphia 76ers. And at 6 foot tall, if that, right? He became the MVP of the league in the 2000-2001 season at the age of 25. At 6 feet tall, maybe 180 pounds, Allen Iverson became the MVP of the NBA. And not only was he really good at basketball, and I mean really good at basketball, he averaged 30 plus points on 5 different occasions, right? And to do that at his size, a lot of people will say he's pound for pound one of the best, or some people will say pound for pound the best player ever, because size does matter in basketball. And for him to do what he was doing in the time when there were great bigs and great centers and forwards, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, the list goes on and on, David Robinson, right? Those were the people he was going up against, and he wasn't a three-point shooter. And multiple time scoring champion. I mean, just an unbelievable player. In the year that he won MVP in 2000-2001, he took his Philadelphia 76ers team that, let's just be honest, right? No disrespect to any of those guys on that team. They didn't have a lot of talent. And their entire game plan was based around Allen Iverson. And so this is the guy that's in that interview. We talking about practice. And let's go back to what that actually was. Right? Because that interview took place in the following season. The year after he was the MVP and they made it to the NBA Finals and lost 4-1 to the LA Lakers, right? The only team to give the Lakers a loss in that playoff run, right? But 2001-2002 NBA season, right? And in that season, they didn't do that well. The Philadelphia 76ers in that year just did not do well. And let's take a look at this right here. They went 43-39 and lost in the first round to the Boston Celtics 3-2, right? And this interview took place a couple days after, which is what apparently happened was they had a team meeting. Allen Iverson was late at the meeting, and him and Larry Brown had a screaming match, right? It was apparently what happened, and then he had this interview later on that day. So this was 4 games after they got bounced out of the playoffs. And in this interview, he was talking about the fact that they're talking about practice and they just got bounced out of the playoffs. He talks about how much of a loss he's been going through. Not just in basketball, right? To go from an NBA Finals appearance to losing in the first round of the playoffs is a big dip, right? He went from the MVP of the league to 9th in the votings in one season, right? So there was a big drop. And his coach was calling him out for practice, for being late, right? And he had lost his best friend earlier in that year as well, too. So a lot was going on in his life. And reporters were accusing him of being drunk, which he had denied. And like I said, a lot of people only know that interview for the 15, 20 seconds of him saying, we talking about practice, until you watch the full interview. And his big thing is the fact that he's not the franchise player of that team. And I think a lot of people were confused as to what he meant by that. And he said, I know I'm the best player on this team. I feel like I'm the best player on this team. But I'm not the franchise player. And he continued on to say that a franchise player wouldn't be going through what he's going through, where he would be getting questioned about practice. Mind you, right? Mind you, Allen Iverson had missed 22 games that season because of an injury. He broke his wrist, I believe, right? Let's take a look at this. So you're talking about a broken left hand. And you're talking about a player that suffered a broken left hand and had to miss time. And so their record dipped. Him on the MVP ladder dipped. And it wasn't because he was necessarily skipping games or missing games. He got hurt. And what did he say? I'm not the franchise player of this team. Because a franchise player wouldn't be dealing with this. And he's not talking about the criticism from the outside, from the reporters. He understands that they have a job to do. He was alluding to the Philadelphia 76ers organization. And that's where this Philadelphia 76ers curse really starts. They mishandled one of the greatest stars that the NBA has ever seen. When you talk about an icon, a cultural icon, a whole generation of kids tried to play like Allen Iverson, dressed like Allen Iverson, got tattoos like Allen Iverson, braids like Allen Iverson. He was a cultural phenomenon. And he did that in spite of the NBA, who, as we saw in the Tim Donaghy documentary, right, about, gambling in the NBA, referees didn't like Allen Iverson because of something he had allegedly said to the referee. And so the referees were out to get him. The NBA was questioning and putting dress codes in. Partly why? Because of Allen Iverson. And so he wasn't the favorite of the league. He was just an undeniable star. And when you have an undeniable star as a team, you would think that you would get behind that person. And I get that players are supposed to get criticism. But the number one supporter of a star player should be their team. They should be the ones promoting you to be an MVP, to be an all-star. Hey, I get we lost this year, but he's great. We'll be back. Don't worry about it. But instead, his coach is coming out talking about practice to a player that has played through injuries, to a player that played hard as hell. You could talk about the shots, the shot selections, the number of shots, but you can't deny how hard this guy played. And so it started with him. The mishandling of Allen Iverson and their star player is what really started this curse for the Philadelphia 76ers. And when he left, when they traded him in 2010, right? His daughter was ill. And he had requested some time off, which they gave him. But at the same time, there were also rumors that they were trying to get rid of him, which they did. They traded him to the Denver Nuggets in 2010. And so when you think about an organization that doesn't have their team, their players' backs, they showed it with Allen Iverson. And then when you get to 2013, right, which is when, ironically, when Allen Iverson retired, right, the Philadelphia 76ers decided to hire Sam Hinkie. And they had began tanking in 2013. And tanking is when you're essentially losing games on purpose to get a better draft pick, right? And so in 2013, right? All right, let's look at this. In 2012, they had Maurice Harkless in the first round. They had the 15th pick. 2013, in the first round, they had the 11th pick, which they got Michael Carter Williams. 2014, they got Joel Embiid with the 3rd pick. 2015, they got Jahlil Okafor with the 3rd pick. 2016, they got Ben Simmons with the 1st pick. And 2017, they got Markelle Fultz with the number 1 pick. So they had back-to-back number 1 picks in 2016 and 2017. And mind you, what is this? Since 2013, 11, 3, 3, 1, 1, they are in all of the lottery picks. 2018 with Mikal Bridges. It wasn't until 2019 when they had a pick outside of the lottery, which is the 24th pick, which they got Ty Jerome. So if anyone is questioning whether or not this Philadelphia 76ers team was tanking or not, don't look any further than their draft picks in the last decade, or in that 2013 to 2019 span specifically. And what did they get rewarded? What did they get rewarded by? By not being true to the game of basketball. By not putting your best foot forward regardless of your talent, regardless of how good you are, regardless of how good you stack up to the rest of the NBA. To intentionally lose games. Excuse me. So let's look at their draft picks, right? Michael Carter Williams, good player, didn't pan out. After his great rookie year, right? He won Rookie of the Year in his rookie year, I believe. Yep, Rookie of the Year in his rookie year. 14.6 the year after that. 2015-16, 2014-15, he was on 2 different teams, 15 points, 14, and then it was all downhill after that, right? So he had never panned out, to what people thought he would be. Joel Embiid, which we're going to talk about a lot. But, projected to be a really good player in the NBA and is honestly one of the best players in the NBA. And I've said before, I think you can argue that he might be the best player in the NBA, even though I still think it's Nikola Jokic. But that's who they got after that in 2014, right? 2015, Jahlil Okafor, solid, right? Solid, but never completely panned out. Had 6 years in the NBA. 17.5 in his first year, and then it was just downhill from that. Let me see. Let's go through this. Ben Simmons, which we're gonna get to in just a second. Some more into in just a second as well too. Number 1 draft pick. Highly sought after in that time. One of the best prospects. People were saying he was the next LeBron or next Magic. Size, athleticism, passing ability. He at the time looked like he had everything, right? And then they got Markelle Fultz in the year after that, who honestly has shown signs of being really solid. Even after his rough rookie season, but he had never panned out. It seemed like he got some kind of weird injury. His jump shot changed in the span of a couple months, and just never panned out, right? And then they got Mikal Bridges, which I think he went to Phoenix, right? I don't even think that was their pick, right? That ended up going to Phoenix. And then, and then and then that was it for them, right? So when you look at the list of those players, right? Markelle Fultz, Ben Simmons, Jahlil Okafor, Joel Embiid, and Michael Carter Williams, 3 of them didn't pan out at all. Didn't pan out at all. And then you had a Joel Embiid and a Ben Simmons, which was supposed to be the next duo in the NBA. You had a Hakeem Olajuwon and Joel Embiid and a Magic Johnson and Ben Simmons. That's what people thought was going to happen. And poetically enough for the Philadelphia 76ers, right? The way that they handled and treated the game of basketball, the star players that they got out of tanking, Ben Simmons, who ended up just not wanting to play and eventually didn't play, and I know he ended up getting injuries, but there's a whole lot of drama in that. Didn't play basketball. A Joel Embiid, who's arguably the best player in the NBA, and I don't think I've seen this man sprint in a couple of years. You have a Tyrese Maxey, who was their 2020 NBA draft pick, calling him out in team meetings this year, which supposedly Joel Embiid was accepting of the critique, right? But he was furious that the word got out, that someone leaked what happened in their players only meeting. And I thought it was ironic for you to be accepting of the criticism and then also be mad. And I get it. Maybe they're upset that there's someone in there that's feeding information out there. But the bottom line is, if you're not playing hard, if you're not trying, if you're not taking this shit seriously, then what are we doing? And I think that's how the Philadelphia 76ers have been paid back. Their mistreatment of Allen Iverson has now resulted in them being mistreated by their star players in Ben Simmons, who eventually left, and a Joel Embiid. He was in an interview saying, he's done a lot for the city, and he's fucking hurt. Even though he's never made an NBA Finals. And even in the way that they didn't make it to that finals, right? How poetic was it that Kawhi Leonard hit a shot and it bounced around and went in? And then on top of that, they had a Jimmy Butler on this team. Didn't work out eventually. They had a James Harden on this team. Still didn't work out. And like I said, I think it stems back from the way that they treated a legend in the game of basketball. Allen Iverson honestly should have been a bigger star in the NBA. Should have been. I think his name gets kind of lost. It almost gets forgotten. And it's the players that have to constantly pay him respect and remind people about who this guy was. Because the Philadelphia 76ers don't. That statue that they put up of him was damn near smaller than him. And it's supposed to be a statue to commemorate this person that was larger than life, that played bigger than what he actually is. There are guys his size walking around right now that couldn't do a fraction of what he was able to do in the NBA. And that's how the Philadelphia 76ers treated him. And so in return, they got back a Joel Embiid and a Ben Simmons. And now, what do we have? A disgruntled Joel Embiid. And even in what happened with him and the reporter, right? There were NBA players that gave great insight as to how teams can take media passes away very easily. And the fact that Joel Embiid very openly said, if I see him, I'm going to do something to him and I'll have to face those consequences. There's no way the team didn't hear about that. And former players spoke about how they've taken media passes away for much less. And they still put Joel Embiid in that position to then go ahead and push that man. And you can say whatever you want. He made that decision far before that moment ever happened. And everyone has a different line that you can cross. And that was his. And you can't get mad at him for that. But the same way the Philadelphia 76ers never protected Allen Iverson, in that moment, they didn't protect Joel Embiid. And honestly, going into this season, Joel Embiid spoke about potentially not being able to play back-to-back games for the rest of his career, and everyone killed him for it. And I said, wait a second. That's a team thing. A player can't just make that decision. That's a team thing. We see Kawhi Leonard going through an issue right now with his personal doctor and the player and the team doctor. If there's an issue and what you're saying as a personal player's doctor is not lining up with the team doctor, well then you can't just do whatever you want. So, Joel Embiid not being able to play back-to-backs, that's a team thing. And Joel Embiid got killed for it. And the Philadelphia 76ers did what? Nothing. They've shown you who they are as an organization. And on paper, Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey, with a Kyle Lowry, a Andre Drummond, the Kelly Oubre, they have a lot of talent and should be able to compete for an NBA title. But they're not going to, because they've been cursed for the way that they've treated their star players in the past. And the irony in the fact that their two current best players, right? Excuse me. Is Jared McCain, who was the number 16 pick in this year's NBA draft, and Tyrese Maxey, who was the 21st pick in the 2020 NBA draft, right? Team players that aren't even lottery picks. And if I were those guys, I would leave this organization immediately, because they don't have your best interest. They won't protect you. They're not going to try to protect you. They don't care. Meanwhile, their two quote-unquote stars in Joel Embiid and Paul George are either sitting on the bench or are pretty non-existent. And it's really fitting for a Philadelphia 76ers organization that has never supported their star players, starting with Allen Iverson. And if you don't think that that goes a long way, well, then that's a whole different conversation. But it clearly has. And I don't think that this is going anywhere at all. And with that being said, I think they're going to end up blowing this team up eventually. I hope Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey have the ability to look ahead and look in the past to leave this situation, because I do think that they make a lot of winning plays and could be a real use on a different team. I'll be honest with you. I think if Tyrese Maxey were on like the Denver Nuggets right now, woo, they would be a problem. Especially the way Jamal Murray's been playing. But that's just what I got for today, man. That's just what I've had on my mind. So what do y'all think, man? Do you think that the Philadelphia 76ers are cursed or nah? Do you think that they have continuously mistreated their star players in the NBA over the better part of 24, 25 years? And will continue to pay for what they've done? Are they paying for tanking? Is it the basketball gods saying, no, you guys can't have what you want because you guys didn't go about it the right way? So what do you guys think, man? Are the Philadelphia 76ers cursed or not? Let me know. But before I get out of here, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps the channel out. We're trying to take this shit to the moon. And we're going to. We're not stopping until we do. And as always, it's your host, your boy, Jayson Estrella. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Y'all could have been anywhere on the internet, but y'all were here with me. And I appreciate y'all for that. I'll see y'all later, man. Peace. Y'all have a great rest of your day, man. Later.